softball is 60 of the world's best, all trying to move up the leaderboard. That leaderboard determined by our innovative scoring system.
Jesse Warren playing like an MVP. Oh my goodness! Takes the play!
Odyssey Alexander.
The laser double play!
Each laying down the front, not going to get her.
The best players in the world.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Week 4 draft. I'm Savannah Collins, joined by my co-host, Kat Osterman, and we have the 4 captains for Week 4 sitting and ready to go to make their picks. So just like last week, we're going to let these captains announce the first 2 rounds, and then we're going to jump into some discussion about what we saw in Week 3, what we think of these picks, and how these teams are shaping up. So we're going to let Megan Farino, who's going to lead the purple team this week, make the first pick of the draft.
Okay, my number 1 pick is catcher Charlize Palacios.
Charlize Palacios is going to team for Ramo this week. Lexi Kilfoyle is going to lead the blue team. She'll make the next selection. Then Sashelle Palacios in orange, and then Amanda Lorenz remains in gold, leading the Week 4 teams. Okay, I usually expect these rounds to go really quick, but after the first pick, we've got some thinking going on.
Well, I wonder if Kilfoyle was going to try to take Charlize just due to the fact that she's had the hot bat. We talked about it last week. We kind of knew someone probably was going to jump in there and break up the sisters. So at least they got Week 3 together. But I have to imagine that Kilfoyle probably thought Faremo was going to go a different route. Although I'm not surprised that that's the route Faremo went. You're talking about a good, solid catcher, obviously someone she's familiar with.
Oh, it looks like Lexi's ready to make her pick. There we go.
Middle infielder Skylar Wallace.
Skylar Wallace going to team Kilfoyle this week. We'll see if this was in Sashelle's plans or not, or if she has some thinking to do too. I think she does. I'm with you. I was a little shocked too. Seeing Charlize come off the board, Kilfoyle needing some time to think, but Sashelle's ready.
Pitcher Taylor McQuillan.
Taylor McQuillan joining the orange squad. Then Amanda Lorenz is going to round out this first round of the draft. And I cannot believe how slow we are moving this morning. I mean, genuinely, we come into these drafts, I'm like, okay, y'all, go ahead and knock out these first 2 picks. But this is different. I think it goes to show just how tight the leaderboard is, how they know every single one of these picks is going to matter in these next 3 games. I mean, we were talking before this draft started. This is the most interested and also confused and intrigued I think I've ever been by the AU softball leaderboard.
Well, and I think you don't have just like a handful of people standing out. So I know as a captain in seasons 1 and 2, like you always had your 3 or 4 game changers, the people who were hitting the best, Amanda Chittister, Hannah Flippen, Haley McClenny, Alicia Ocasio for a while before she was a captain, people who were earning a lot of points and helping you get the wins. And I just feel like almost every week we have a different handful of game changers. So you don't have a consistent set of game changers other than the captains. And for us, this week, obviously 3 returning and Megan getting back in the mix. But, Megan going with a strong catcher, not shocking. Kilfoyle going with a middle infielder. A lot of times middle infielders, unless they're a game changer. Now, don't get me wrong. Skylar Wallace has been very hot at the plate. Not so sure she had to use her first pick on her, but we're getting the thumbs up from Amanda Lorenz.
Pitcher Alicia Ocasio.
Okay, so far that is literally the only pick of this draft that I predicted right. That's such a great point, Kat, of just, I think in previous seasons, there's been kind of like no-brainers in the first round and then in the second round too. And it's been a matter of who gets to pick that person they wanted first. But this season has been so interesting. I mean, we think about where Charlize was drafted last week and then compared to week 2 and week 1, her draft stock has significantly increased. And I think the thing that I think about with Meg is not only are we seeing her be one of the hottest hitters in this league, but they, were a battery this past week on Team Palacios. And so for Meg to be able to go in and get a catcher that is someone who's hitting super well and she knows that she works together with, but it's, somebody that was middle of the pack up until this past week when she proved that, hey, I am one of the best players, if not the best rookies in this league too. Man, what a first round to see Charlize off the board, followed by Skylar Wallace, Taylor McQuillan, Alicia Ocasio, 2 vets and 2 rookies.
Yeah, as you said, there's the familiarity that Meg has with Charlize. Plus, let's not forget Charlize transferred to UCLA and actually was out for a year due to some injuries, I believe. So it's not like they weren't familiar prior to AU, but they had the week together. But for Megan, she needs a solid catcher that you want, one that is offensively producing right now that early. And Amanda's going to interrupt me again with her thumbs up.
Pitcher, Georgina Corrick.
Ooh, Georgina Corrick. That to me was who I was maybe predicting Sashel to draft first after watching their dugout and their bullpens. But the Amanda Lorenz to establish Alicia Ocasio and Georgina Corrick, I'm really wondering how long the rest of this round is going to take.
Well, I'm not shocked that Sashel went with McQuillan. So now you're talking familiarity from Arizona, and those two have worked together. It's been historic, even when McQuillan has been a captain and Sashel wasn't, that she's chosen Sashel. So that pairing actually makes a lot of sense. And McQuillan not coming off the board with Faremo or Kilfoyle, which rightfully so, they don't have to get another ace pitcher if they don't want to. Heading into the last 2 weeks, it's not a bad idea too, because then you get a lot of point earning pitchers as opposed to having to staff it. But Lorenz, a little bit of a different look now, adding Corrick though to her roster where she was very veteran heavy, but her circle of people. So Corrick's going to be a new one in the mix there.
Definitely.
Middle infielder, Aubrey Leach.
Aubrey Leach repeating with Sashel Palacios this week. Somebody who has been one of the best hitters in this league. There's only 4 people hitting above 350 right now in the whole league, and Aubrey Leach is one of them. We saw her hit for power this week, lay down bunts, slaps, just consistently get on base. And the thing that we really saw play into Aubrey's game, I felt like in week 3, was her base running too. Delayed steals, double steals. Those are the things that I have not seen a ton of in the history of Athletes Unlimited softball. Maybe a bright spot now and then of that. But when you're trying to push one run and pick up inning points, that matters. And I really like that about the strategy of Team Palacios last week.
Well, Aubrey Leach has been one that, obviously we saw her take season 2 off because she had to go, do the law school thing. So completed law school, obviously has been able to play with AU again, but she is just a complete all-around player. And you talk about someone triple threat. So you'll see her use the small ball, the slap, hit away, just very game savvy, high softball IQ. I got to be the recipient of all of that in season 1. I would select her quite high routinely because of that. And you don't want to chance somebody else, taking a chance on her when you know what you're getting. So really cool to see all of that paying off still here in season 5 for Aubrey Leach. And to be honest, right now, she would be one of the first middle infielders I would take just because of her game savviness and the fact she can play both middle infield positions, better at second base, in my opinion. But if you get in a crunch, you can put her somewhere else. And she does a really good job of helping run the defense when you need her to. So you get a whole complete package with Aubrey Leach.
Outfielder, Bubba Nichols.
Bubba Nichols heading to Team Kilfoyle, another one of those athletes hitting above 350 right now. We've seen her be consistent. She's coming off of her championship at the AUX season. But just kind of looking at these teams and how we got here this week. So obviously Team Palacios is really one of the stories of the weekend. First time captain going 3-0. That really shook some things up on the leaderboard. Then he had Team Lorenz. They picked up 170 win points. Team Kilfoyle had 190. So those two were kind of right in there together when it came to winning innings and winning games. And then Team McQuillan with just 70 win points. Athletes on those teams really have some work to do this week to try and fight their way back up the leaderboard. But they'll be on new teams, and that's kind of how things shook out in week 3 as we saw, I would say, obviously you have a 3-0 team, but for the most part, competitive games and really balanced.
Well, yeah, you saw, as we mentioned, like there was not the same person stepping up every game this past weekend. So everything kind of started to even the playing field a little bit. What I'm interested in with Kilfoyle so far is she's taken Peyton Gottschall early in the draft the last 2 weeks. And really, Gottschall probably throwing her best outing this past weekend for Kilfoyle. But now Kilfoyle going the opposite route. Looks like she's going for a lot of consistent hitters early, as opposed to rounding out her pitching staff at all. So significant change there in Kilfoyle's draft status. She does have Caroline Hardy with her. So Hardy, very knowledgeable in that realm. But in talking about the facilitators real quick, Amanda Lorenz is partnered back up with Emily Carasoni, who she had 2 weeks ago. And she attributed to Carasoni's ability to keep her on her game plan as part of that success.
Pitcher Peyton Gottschall.
There she is, Kat. You mentioned how great of an outing she had, and that's who's going to join Team Faremo. What do you think about Megan and Peyton, kind of like as a pairing, whether Meg goes the pitch by committee route or if she's maybe getting to a point in week 4 where she's comfortable throwing extended innings? Anything you're expecting? I know we're only 2 picks in, but that's a pairing we've never seen before.
No, and I think they're similar. So Meg may not be looking at who complements her as much as who can give her, if she's going to bank on herself going deep for 2 games. So you're going to say like game 1 and 3, who can go deep in game 2. And Gottschall proved this week that she has the ability to go deep into a game. She did very well. She mixed her speeds, used her spin really well. And so Meg may be thinking, okay, this is going to be my game 2 starter. And now the next 2 for their staff should complement those 2. They're both more upspin. They both throw hard. But at the same time, if Megan's thinking, okay, how do we get the most win points? Who can keep offenses at bay deep into the game? Peyton Gottschall right now is not a bad bet.
I think that's been a really interesting kind of storyline of this season is watching captains more than ever use pitch by committee and seeing those who can use it successfully and know when to make changes and know who to pair together, and those that sometimes it almost does more damage than it does good. I spent a lot of time in the Team Palacios dugout this past week. And when I think about, someone who has come to master that, it's her. Even though she wasn't a captain on Team Wallace, when she was in that team environment, she did the same thing for Skylar Wallace because she's in the field. I actually would, kind of say after seeing Taylor Edwards be a captain at AUX and now watching Sashel do it too, there's a unique advantage that catchers have in being a captain because they have the best view of what's really happening with this pitcher when it's time to make changes, but they don't have to, go to a captain or a facilitator and suggest it. They can just make that change themselves. And I think it does really help them out in what they are able to control, having so much say in the game and having the best view of what's happening.
But yeah, they have a very, very honest view of what a pitcher's doing. And at the same time, they can have a game plan and quickly pivot when they see that maybe, okay, my plan was to go 3 innings with this pitcher, but I can only shorten it to 2 because we're starting to get hit hard. They're barreling up balls. Or, hey, we've gone 2 innings and not shown a ton of off speed. I'm going to try to do this for an inning, but at the same time, have somebody ready. I'm trying to think back. I don't even think, I don't know if there was a catcher that was a captain. I know Savannah Jaquish was technically a catcher, but she played third more of the time. So I don't know that she approached it as a catcher early in those first 2 seasons, but a very different perspective for Palacios, and why we've been chatting about that. Faremo going with the big gun right there in the 3rd pick with Haley McClenny being able to shore up her leadoff spot and center field.
Definitely. You mentioned of catchers who have been captains in the past, and I think about Deja Moli-Polish championship run. We were so focused on talking about her offense and the home runs and how her slugging is what just shot her up the leaderboard. But when it came to winning games, at no point in that season did I ever stop and go, oh, maybe these games that she's calling and the way that she manages these pitching staffs are, not only why she's so relaxed and performs well at the plate, but that she has full control over what's happening. It's something now I almost want to go back and look at that of Deja's games, how they scored, things like that. But in this race that we have right now, it is really anybody's championship to take over these next 2 weeks.
I think a catcher who calls a good game, it's overlooked because you give so much credit to the pitcher for executing. And that's where you'll see a lot of our defensive MVPs have been catchers, because the group as a whole sees what they've been able to do with a pitcher and how to work with a staff and call a great game, that kind of thing. So I like the defensive MVP addition now, because it does give some credit to catchers who maybe they don't get the big hit, but they did a great job behind the plate. And, I think as Athletes Unlimited goes on into the 5 weeks, pitchers and catchers start to get comfortable with each other. And that's where you see the calling of the game be such a bigger piece. But it's interesting. There's a couple of names that haven't popped up yet that I'm just shocked.
I'm with you, though, about the defensive MVP. That might be one of my favorite things to, watch happen for the first time at AUX, and seeing how it's continued, just being able to recognize like those big moments, like Aaliyah Andrews' catch that would have changed, the outcome of that inning and that game if she hadn't been able to make that catch. And then the same thing for the catchers too, just getting credit for the way that they impact their games. We're starting to see some more of those picks roll in. So Peyton St. George is going to be another person on this Team Kilfoyle pitching staff aside from the captain. Then Tori Vidalis joining Team Palacios, and Hannah Flippin going to Team Lorenz. That pick doesn't surprise me. Amanda's been super vocal on broadcasts and interviews about how big of a help Flip has been, and just being someone to bounce ideas off of, help her manage her team, strategize with. That's really neat to have somebody who can take on that role to just be your sounding board and work with during the week, instead of feeling all that responsibility on yourself. So we wait for these next picks for the 4th round to come through. As we've talked about how tight this race is, just for context, Sachelle in 2nd place right now is only 4 points behind Amanda. That is a single at bat that could have changed the way this leaderboard looks right now. Skylar Wallace was only 2 points behind Megan Faramo. She could have been the purple team captain this week. And in fact, she's tied with Haley McClenny. So it could have been her too. Number 10 on the leaderboard right now, who is actually Erin Koffel, is only 190 points behind first. We're kind of talking about win points and things like that. That's just a flip of your win points, or a couple MVP votes too.
Well, that's where sometimes, like watching this last week, there have been situations where maybe a pitching change was made or someone got pinch hit for, and it was like, man, that ended up being a game changer as far as swinging the game the other way. And I think captains have to start to be cognizant of, you may have a game plan, but if someone's rolling, like, let them keep going, because that 10-inning win point can be the difference in, as you said right now, like first 1 through 4, 10, 20, 40 points can be a big difference. And that's a couple innings here and there. So it's just more cognizant of how you get it. And, Sachelle catapulted into 2 because of win points. She was able to really manage her team, get the most win points so far this season, but this past week, and really be able to move herself up because of what her team did, not necessarily what she did. And, we'll go back, Savannah, to what, season 4? Was Odyssey season 4? Because Deja was season 3. Odyssey, I think, was the first champion that wasn't a stat point leader. She was a win point leader. So the win points really can make the difference, even if you're not necessarily garnering the points at bat or in the pitching circle.
Well, what's going to be neat too, and this is kind of where the matchups of games start to get really interesting for me in week 4, and then at a high level in week 5, is that kind of leading up to this point, it just feels like every game is, points laid out for you without a lot of thought to, well, if I get these points, it means somebody else doesn't get these points. So last night is a perfect example with Team Lorenz and Team Palacios matching up. Every time that Sachelle was racking up the win points, those were points that weren't available for Amanda. So when it comes to these top 4, top 10, when you want to see people move up and down and kind of the scales change, it's going to come down to when their team is playing the person in front of them on the leaderboard. So it's something to definitely think about, is maybe you're predicting who's going to be a medalist, who's going to be in the top 10. It's really going to come down to matchups. And then the other thing is, it's really hard to pass people you're on the same team with. That just doesn't happen very often. Like, I'm looking right now at Tori Vidalis 7th on the leaderboard, and Sashel 2nd. They're on the same team this week. They're going to get win points together and move up and down the leaderboard together. It's really hard to pass people you're on the exact same team with, which is something that I really enjoy watching. I'm trying to make predictions of how is this going to shake out.
Well, and you talk about that, and you talk about like the Palacios Lorenz game the other night. Tori Vidalis was 4 for 4. So in the realm, you think she's going to get MVP, but then Palacios ends up winning, and now those MVP points that could have put Tori Vidalis in the top 4 are no longer there, because she was flirting with possibly getting in to be a captain until Palacios made that comeback and ultimately ended up winning. And obviously their team swept the MVP points. So it's always a big change. And yeah, when you're on a team with somebody who else who's garnering so many points, it's a big change and it's hard. You have to be able to perform. But again, I think the craziest part is just the top 10 and how close they all are. And if anybody gets hot, these top 4 could change.
Definitely. I think the one that is a really great testament to that is Charlize. Coming into this week from when these games started on technically Wednesday, but we finally got action going on Saturday to now, she jumped 31 spots on the leaderboard to be sitting at number 8. That is incredible to have done in week 3. I think I'll see that sometimes, in week 2. Maybe you jumped 18 spots. I think that was how many Alicia Ocasio jumped last week as a pitcher. But as a hitter, to move up 31 spots, that is significant when we talk about where you're going to finish on this leaderboard. You're vying for money, your bonus, your win points. That's huge. And when I look at her stats right now, what sticks out to me is she's 3rd in stat points on the season. To be a hitter who's a rookie beating out veteran pitchers for those stat points, that is incredible. All right, looking at this next round coming in. So Taylor Edwards is going to join Team Lorenz this week. That's something that I find, that's going to be interesting for Lexi Kilfoyle, because that has been really her sounding board. We kind of talk about those people who take on that role within the league. Taylor Edwards has been her leader when it comes to helping her build lineups and make changes and adjustments. So she's going to have to find a new catcher to work with this week. Mariah Masson joining Team Palacios. Sarah Willis, Team Kilfoyle again. And then Sis Bates rounds out this round. Anything that sticks out to you about these 4th round picks?
Well, I mean, like you said, I think Taylor Edwards, the veteran, obviously Lorenz picking up somebody who great pitch caller offensively could go off. Interesting to me, Mariah Mazon picked by Palacios. The Denham-McQuillan combo had been working for a while, and we've seen the 3 of them worked well together. So really honestly shocked that we haven't seen Alyssa Denham come off the board. I mean, she is technically 4th in ERA, but if I don't like to count if you don't have at least 10 innings. So if you put the 10 inning minimum, she's 2nd or 3rd in ERA in the league right now, and really had a quality week this last week. So, interesting there that, Mazone and Willis both coming off the board earlier than Denham, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm thinking right now with Team Palacios and the opportunity to possibly draft Denham right now could be a game changer to have McQuillan, Masson, and Denham. And I also think none of those 3 pitchers being the captain. Somebody else is handling that. You just get to come in and be a gamer. Man, I think that could be a really strong pick here, but Sachel's going to pick up Aaliyah Andrews right now in the 5th round. I know we're going to have some questions about that replacement player that was drafted by Team Paramo to start off the 5th round. So Mia Davidson is out for the season due to injury. We wish her well. It's such a bummer. She was having such a great year last year. I was so excited to see her return and build on that momentum, not only as a hitter, but also as one of the premier catchers in this league too. She's going to remain in Rosemont and stay with the league and stay involved, and she'll actually join a team and be a part of that team so that she's still a part of the league. But there is going to be a replacement catcher in particular signed this week to be a part of the league. And it's somebody that's going to fly in and sign a contract and join to replace Mia Davidson, especially as a catcher. It's a must-have position here. So that's who was drafted to Team Paramo in the 5th round. then Sid McKinney, Andrews, like we mentioned, and then Sydney Romero. But I'm with you about Denham. I feel like somebody who can pick her up now in the 6th round, you've got the steal of the draft.
No, I agree. I just looking at the rosters, I mean, Palacios sounds like a no-brainer. I think Faremo might be able to use her well too behind herself and Gottschall. So that might be something she's looking at. Although when you're talking about Faremo, she probably needs another hitter or two, especially obviously replacement player. We don't know who that is yet. You don't know what they're going to do offensively when they haven't been playing for the last couple of weeks, or maybe they have, who knows? You don't know how well they're seeing the ball. But
yeah, I think that's a great point. And maybe some power in that next pick too. Obviously, you have that with Charlize. Haley McClenny can do a little bit of everything. Sis Bates has been so consistent this season. She's actually somebody I wanted to mention. She was on a 7-game hit streak, a 400 average. In the years that I've covered her career, this is the best I have ever seen Sis Bates in the box. She's been doing such a great job. She's second in the league in hits with 12. But if I'm Megan Faremo right now, I'm maybe looking at somebody whose slugging has been off the charts. Maybe one of those home run leaders, because they've been so far and few between. Obviously, Charlize has 3. Sierra Romero has 2. What we saw from Kaylee Harding this week, that would be somebody on my list. Erin Koffel as well. I think that would be on my next pick as well. As we see Erin Koffel come off the board, go to Team Palacios, and then Kelsey Stewart-Hunter going to Team Lorenz. None of these teams look familiar to previous weeks. This is a complete reset.
Yeah, I think everyone will, as we mentioned, like it's kind of up in the air who's hot what week. And so everyone's kind of reshuffling with their picks here. We see Kilfoyle goes with Kayla Kowalik, which, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the first catcher she's grabbed, correct?
It is, yeah.
So,
which I guess they had a good connection in the one game that Taylor Edwards was absent. We've seen Kowalik play a lot of outfield, and then she came and was the catcher in that game. Called a great game, did a good job. So, maybe that's what Kilfoyle is going with as her battery catcher. Wow. I mean, I know we're sitting here right now talking about the draft. I can't wait to talk to these captains this week of like, how much to your plan were you able to stick through this first, even 6 rounds? Is this what you thought your team was going to look like, or did everybody throw you for a loop? Were you ever in situations like that?
There were a few times when you get to like the middle rounds that you have a plan and then you really think you know who like the captain before you was going to pick and they don't, or they steal your person like 2 picks before and you didn't see it coming. But, I think you try to always have like this person or this person. Like if this person's here, then great. If not, we're going to go with this person. But I think there's always 1 week each season that I tried to, okay, well, we're going to go this, and then we can wait on this person because I'm sure they'll be there in a round or 2. And then they weren't. So I had to stop trying to look too many rounds ahead and really go with what my gut said in that round. So I think Faremo taking Charlize right off the bat threw people for a loop. I don't know who they thought she was going to pick, but you could tell that Kilfoyle got a little bit thrown for a loop and having to take some extra time. And then, Sash probably was ready for it just in case. But now I think it's a matter of, what are you consulting? Are you trying to look culture, your people? Are you looking at stats? The interesting piece to me is how far down some of our stat leaders go. Sydney McKinney hitting 400, and she's here in the 5th round. And same thing, as we mentioned, Alyssa Denham still not off the board, and she's one of the top in ERAs if you have more than 10 innings here in AU.
Yeah, I am really shocked as where we're seeing people go. Let's actually take a look at who's left. I know we've got quite a few rounds to go, but we'll take a peek at who's left for each position. We've mentioned Alyssa Denham just being somebody that I'm expecting to go. Who I was really excited to watch was Kat Sandercock getting the start, stepping into a different role in that way this past week, and then she took that ball off her hand and had to come out that game. That's somebody who I think could be really dynamic within a staff. As for outfielders, Claire Davidson, she's hitting so well, so consistent. I see a couple options left for catchers. The corner infielders on the board. No infielders too. Anybody else who stands out to you from this group?
I just think the plethora of outfielders still available is showing,
Yeah.
Where captains are putting their priority. I feel like Harshman's gone pretty high up in the last couple weeks. She's not. Anissa Ortez, routinely one of the best shortstops we've had defensively, but I felt like she started coming into her own this last week, offensively a little bit more. So kind of shocked those two are still on the board. Jessie Warren, you never know when she's going to get hot. So, I mean, it's so crazy to see some, and even in the pitching department, I mean, how many times have we seen a draft go this long and Rachel Garcia, two-way players?
Bizarre. So bizarre.
But it's just showing how no one person is dominating week to week. So there's not these must-haves. So now you're trying to put pieces together with what's important to you.
Yeah. I think we've seen that play out differently, seeing the teams who can rally. I think Team Lorenz has been that in week 2. This past week when it came to chemistry, passing the bat mentality, that was Sachelle Palacios' team last week. So at this point, you could go a lot of different directions with who you're trying to put together on your team. There goes Claire Davidson to start off the 7th round to Team Framo. I think those are 2 great back-to-back picks by Megan to pick up Sierra and Claire Davidson there, really getting a consistent hitter in both, one that can hit for power, and we've seen her do it this season, especially last week. Kind of taking a look at the chat, seeing what you guys think. Update on Kat. So you guys can see a lot of times when we have a little mark by a player's name, Kat Sandercock on our draft board is not listed as active with limitations, but usually that gets updated throughout the week. So as of right now, she was listed as a full go. Agreed, Ladarius Garcia on the board still is a shocker. Let's see. Yeah, surprised how Denim and Cat has not been taken yet. Totally agree. Yeah. I mean, these teams are going to be really interesting. I've definitely got my work cut out for me to go to practice and figure out what these captains were thinking and what they wanted. Try and have some stories ready for you guys this week. See this next round trickling in. Something
there we see Denim off the board, paired up again with Sachelle and McQuillan, as we talked about. So a trio, plus you add in Mariah Maison, who are all really familiar with each other.
Yeah, that staff stands out to me, mostly because I really believe in Sachelle's abilities after a 3-0 week and as a catcher to manage her staff, being able to do it with the minds like McQuillan, who she's familiar with, Masson, Denim as well. That group stands out to me looking at this draft board right now.
Well, there we see both pitchers we were shocked haven't been taken, have now been taken, and follow that up. Kelsey Harshman, as I said, has usually gone a little bit sooner in the draft.
Yeah, last week
the seventh round, the big surprise to me is Caroline Jacobson. I know she came in and did a great job in that game yesterday for Team Kilfoyle and thrown in the mix after some people had to leave and some injuries and whatnot, but still just really a surprise to go that early. Not just that she went, but just that early.
Yeah, last week she was drafted 13th to this team. Same team, Team Kilfoyle. Today she's going 7th. That's a major leap up the board. You know, what I'm trying to pick out now as I kind of look at these teams and compare them is there anybody who really went for some similar picks? Team Kilfoyle has a couple. Skylar Wallace was with her last week. Bubba Nichols is new. Peyton St. George was on last week's team, as well as Sarah Willis. Sid McKinney is a repeat on that team. So is Kowalik. and Caroline Jacobson and Bailey Klingler. So if there is one person who's still going to for familiarity, it's Team Kilfoyle. Just swap it out a couple pieces. I think Peyton Gottschall being the biggest one that's not the repeat. This round is rolling on through. Like we said, Kelsey Harshman, Sam Fisher returning with Sashel this week, Klingler. You know what's neat is I was kind of digging into the leaderboard and what is it taken for champions to win in the past. And by week 3, whoever was in gold became the champion. That was the case for you, Alicia, Deja, and Odyssey. You were in gold in week 3, you won. And this is no knock to Amanda, but I don't think it's that certain anymore. Just having Sashel only 4 points behind her, it could be any of these 4. It could be quite a few who are in the top 10. Just, there is nothing for me to make solid predictions off of like I have in the past. In Odyssey's run last year, I remember looking at like her win points are so significantly ahead of everybody else's. If she can keep putting together winning teams, she doesn't really even need the MVP points. She's just got to manage great teams, and she's going to win this season. And that was super fascinating to watching her run. Deja, her bat was just so hot. You really couldn't catch up to somebody who's consistently collecting 40 points, 20 points every time they step into the box. And then for you and Alicia just being so dominant in the circle, like we've said, being able to go extended innings, there's certain things that make you hard to catch when you're in the top 4. There's nothing I can really say that about with these 4 right now, aside from Lexi Kilfoyle continues to lead the league in stat points by a pretty heavy margin.
Yeah, one, Kilfoyle's thrown the most innings over anybody, so her stat points are because of how much she can run herself out there. And as a pitcher and a captain, you get to dictate what you can possibly do. Like, you also have to go perform, but you get to dictate how many innings you're in the circle. I remember in season 1, week 2 or 3, I think it was week 2 maybe, I didn't plan on pitching at all in game 2, but I had gone through the other 3 pitchers. It was a close game, and I had loosened up a little bit, and I just remember I had selected Randy Rupp, and I was like, what do I do? And she's like, go put yourself in already. We want to win. And I was like, okay, but you're trying to balance it out and not overexert yourself, not also say, hey, I'm going to do this all myself. But I just remember she looked at me and hands went flying and was like, go in already. So you have that ability as a pitcher to put yourself in at any point. But I do think the key is that week 4 has to be win points for you as a captain, especially in the gold share.
Yeah.
So that's the big key is, can you put together a team that you get those win points? The other thing is we've had some really tightly contested games that have gone back and forth. And so there's no one that's just straight up getting 50, 60, 70 points of the inning points as often. I feel like we've had times in the past where, there were games straight dominated by one team, and that's just not the case right now.
Totally. Kind of digging into that a little bit, just for fans to give you some context. So Lexi Kilfoyle is our stat point leader. She has 316. Megan Faramo is second in the category. She has 242. And then Charlize and Amanda Lorenz are right behind them, 238, 230. So that's kind of how we're seeing that category shake out. We can see that change if Meg comes in and throws complete games like we know that she's able to do. And we can see her maybe take over that category. Then the other one is MVP points. Lexi Kilfoyle leads in that with 160. Taylor McQuillan, who's 17th on the leaderboard, is second in the category with 120, but she's tied with a bunch of athletes that have that same number of MVP points. So that's not telling me anything either. The only thing I'm really going off of is win points. And you've got Sashel Palacios and Andrea Filler, who lead the league in that with 810 win points. That is a lot at this point in the season. Couple athletes sitting around 750, 730, 710, most notably Amanda Lorenz. She's kind of has a little bit in every category. 730 win points, 230 stat points, 100 MVP points. That is a balanced point accumulation, which is one of the only other things I can usually go off of to go, okay, that looks like champion numbers. Nothing's too heavy. Nothing's too light. But man, I don't know. That's a great point. Week 4, I think it's going to be all about win points. If the teams are balanced, I think we're going to be right back here next week doing the next draft. But if we do have somebody who takes over the inning wins, the game wins, we'll maybe have an idea.
Yeah, and then you're talking about that, and then Faremo and Kilfoyle have to play kind of the game if they want to position themselves. So, like, if I'm Megan Faremo, you may have to go head-to-head against Kilfoyle if you're going to keep her from getting additional points. You know,
Right.
You can kind of control or have a say in how those innings play out when you're pitching against her, or you don't and you take your gamble against one of the other rosters. But there's that way to look at it now too, and it'll be interesting. Like, this might be the first week, Savannah, like, looking at the rosters, there's not one or two rosters where I'm like, yeah, that team and that team are for sure at least winning 2 games, if not all 3. Obviously not only one can win all 3, but we've had kind of in the past where we both wavered between, this team or that team. And
Yeah.
Right now, this might be the most balanced draft I think we've seen this season.
Okay, I want to come back to something you just said, though. If I'm Meg and I want to pass Lexi on the leaderboard and I'm my ace and she's her ace, I want to put myself in the game that she's also starting. So it kind of decides that I'm going to beat you out in the same game we're both in. Is that how far you would take it in strategy?
I would. I mean, I would put
Wow.
myself in as the starter, and if she doesn't put herself in the starter, then you can choose. Because if Kilfoyle's going against Faremo, the only way she can keep Meg from leaping her is by pitching as well, because she gets 4 points for every out. So if she's not in, she can get the inning points, but she's not getting stat points, but Meg's getting stat points. So even if Meg allows a run or two and she pitches 5 innings, she still is garnering points that Lexi's not. So if Lexi starts herself to combat that and try to stay even, in my opinion, Meg would need to put herself in. So if I'm Meg, I'm throwing against Team Kilfoyle regardless.
Wow. Okay. I love that. We're starting to see these next picks come in. So Jesse Warren rounded out that 8th round. Then Faremo had a double pick for Rachel Garcia. That's somebody that if she clicks and she really becomes, as effective as we've seen her be in the past, this team could mow down some people. But I think it's going to be really contingent on that 9th pick with Garcia. Kaylee Harding going to Team Kilfoyle had the clutch home run this past week for Team Palacios. Then Zerk, Orange Squad, Piancastelli, Gold. Double picks with Vic Hayward. So she's active with limitations. She was for a couple games this past week. That's why you saw Team Kilfoyle make all those crazy lineup changes of just moving Caroline Jacobson to center. Sid McKinney had to play right. So she's active, but with limitations. Ortez in orange, Jordan Rudley in blue. We'll see who this last pick is. A lot of Team Mexico on Team Palacios this week.
That's what I was just about to point out was Sachel's got Team Mexico back together with McQuillan, Tori Vidalis, Anissa Ortez. But I'm liking the roster she's putting together there. Tori Vidalis obviously swinging a hot bat. Anissa Ortez, as we mentioned, defensively so strong. She's starting to swing a hot bat. You got some speed in there with Zirkle, Aubrey Leach, Aaliyah Andrews. So really, I think Palacios is putting together a very strong all-around lineup right now. But go back to Faremo and her pick of Rachel Garcia. You have the 1-2 tandem that was so strong for UCLA for a while. So maybe for Rachel, that's a good comfort zone, and the two of them can play off of each other.
Yeah, Rachel's one of those people too. Just she keeps her cards close to her chest. She's a competitor. She's in the dugout a lot of times, seems pretty quiet. But it might be worth figuring out this week, like, hey, what is it that you need to be successful? What is it that you feel like hasn't been clicking for you? Is it a certain pitch? Is it just how you felt mentally or how you felt in the circle? That might be my job this week to figure that out and see if being with Meg and Shar and this team is maybe the thing that turns that around for her. And if that's the case, I wouldn't want to see that 1-2 punch at all. Jordan Rudley coming in the 10th round, along with Kayla Beaver too. Somebody said that in the chat. They wanted to see Kayla Beaver play again with Meg Faremo. You got your wish. She's picked here in the 10th round to that squad. Let's take a look at who's left when it comes to these last couple picks that we're going to make. Some pitching staffs are complete. Some have a couple more to add. Val Cagle, Odyssey Alexander, Hope Trotwine. Val Cagle is someone who I'll say, when she comes in these little mid-relief positions, we need an inning from you, we need 2 innings for you, she is super effective. Especially someone who's maybe worked with her in the past, like Sachelle, that could be a great pickup. A lot of outfielders still on the board. A couple catchers, infielders, middle and corners. So that's who we've got left that will round out some of these stats and complete these staffs and complete these teams. Going back to the board, is there a pitching staff that stands out to you? I know we talked a little bit about, how Team Palacios could work together and how Ferramo and Garcia could be a pairing. What do you think about Team Lorenz?
I think Team Lorenz has a really strong staff. That's what I was just trying to get a little closer look at the lineups here. But, you have Ocasio, who is, again, when you take my 10-inning minimum that I'm going to put on pitchers, top 3 in ERA. Last 2 weeks has looked incredibly sharp. So I think she can go deep in games. Court, what Court gives you. It's the same thing. And then you have Kat Sandercock, who got an opportunity to be a starter, but has been great as a relief pitcher lately. So those 3 alone, I feel like you can piece together a 3-game series with, regardless. So whoever you add on the back end is going to obviously be an attribute, but those 3 can get you really far. Sachelle, it's going to be the familiarity with McQuillan and Denham. Obviously, they all worked well together. Mazzone, again, surprised she went so high, but she's been in the league for a while now. Again, an opportunity to get with catchers she's familiar with. But the interesting part of Ferramo's staff to me is they are all very similar. So there are a lot of up ball pitching. So Ferramo, curve rise, she has her changeup. She can go down a little bit. Gottschall mainly hard thrower up. Garcia similar. And we know Caleb Beaver is all hard and up. So the question mark there to me is if somebody's on somebody, what are you going to show different? But she might also just be banking on herself to be able to go deep. And if she can't, then she'll rely on one of these others, but she also knows what Rachel's capable of. So if you are talking about going deep in games, I do believe with her, Peyton, and Rachel, you might have that opportunity.
Totally. I think if I'd have put someone else in that mix when she was on the board for so long, it probably would have been Denham. Someone who can throw extended innings and has a completely different look, different speed than Meg. We'll see how that group comes together as these next couple picks start to file in. So Gwen Svekis going to Team Lorenz. There's Val Cagle going to Team Palacios. Okay, at least I'm right about something today. Aside from that, I've just been missing on my guesses. Allie Skaggs going to Team Kilfoyle. Then Morgan DeBoard joins Team Ferramo. We were looking through these picks. There was something that piqued my interest, but now I'm trying to go back and figure out where it was, where I was like, oh, I wonder how that's going to work out for these teams. And we were talking about how Team Mexico is on Team Palacios a lot. I think for me, what's really interesting about Team Lorenz is kind of the different things that you can get from Ocasio, Cork, and Sandercock. We saw how effective the week 2 pitch by committee was for Amanda. And I think I could see her do it again this week really effectively. But Mazzone is one that, and I'm going to have to go back and look, but I remember at this point in the season last year, she just suddenly was like firing on all cylinders. I think it was either week 3 or week 4 where she was my mover of the week, made the biggest leap up the leaderboard, had some crazy good games. So historically, I think this is the point in the season where Mariah Mazzone really starts to be a difference maker. I remember she was one of those pitchers that really helped Odyssey Alexander manage her games last season in her championship run. Take a peek at the chat. Yep, saw some questions about Vic. She's active with limitations. Yep. Shocked that Wiz went so low. Yeah, I'd agree. She's had some great at-bats. Clark to Lorenz, so good at AUX. Haven't had a lot of opportunities yet this season. Totally agree. Clark just hasn't played quite as much as she did at AUX. We saw her make some spectacular catches. She had some big moments too at the plate. Seeing Wiz, Wiggins, and Borden come in here. What about Hannah Borden? 3 pro at bats. Her first hit, home run. That was crazy.
You can't draw it up, but when you see it happen,
No.
it's awesome. That was a huge opportunity for her and obviously sparked that turnaround in that game. But you love to see it, especially for a rookie who has had limited opportunities. But obviously, Kilfoyle, seeing what happened, going to try to bank and see if she can keep that magic going. I'd like to back up a couple of picks, though. You look at Team Lorenz. She finished out her catchers, but in my opinion, and no offense to any of the other catchers in Athletes Unlimited, because they're all great, but you might have 2 of the most experienced, seasoned, smart pitch calling catchers in Taylor Edwards and Gwen Svekis, both on that roster, and that allows you to kind of mix and match and maybe see if one pitcher works better with a certain catcher than another, swap in and out, and have somebody available as a pinch hitter. I don't know if those 2 have ever been on a roster together, but that is a good duo behind the plate.
Yeah, that is my next season homework. I don't think Tay and Gwen have ever been on the same team. And the fact that they are here in season 5 is crazy. Maybe once. I'll have to ask them.
Yeah, I know. I can't recall ever in seasons 1 or 2. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. I don't think so either. Wow, what a combo. Now I'm so excited to see if there are pairings, a true battery type situation. It's not often we got to see it. We saw it a little bit last week with Megan Faremo and Charlize, how they worked together on Team Palacios because they had Sachelle as well. But that is going to be really, really neat to see play out from Team Lorenz. These last couple picks are trickling in here. Wiz, Wiggins, Borden, like we mentioned. Filler going to Team Faremo. Double picking has Carly Spade on her roster. We just got a couple picks left in this draft. Any team that's standing out to you so far? I'm a little stumped.
Through the first 6 or 7 rounds, there wasn't one way I was leaning. And again, Team Lorenz still going veteran heavy. No rookies on that roster so far. But I like the group of veterans she has. So I think didn't wear the tank top on purpose, but maybe we'll go with Team Gold this week and go with Team Lorenz. I do like the roster Sachelle's putting together too. She's got a good mix. I like her pitching staff, but I think she has some really key veterans that could be big pieces.
Roster-wise, Lorenz and Palacios stand out to me. But I will say Faremo is a team where if there are just a couple people in there that click, that will be the team to beat. But it's going to be super reliant on some shifts for people. But I could see that becoming a really tough team, but she just needs a couple things to come together. She needs Peyton Gottrell to have a week like she did this past one. She needs Rachel Garcia to kind of come around and be as dominant in the circle she's been in the past. If Jessie Warren takes off this week, there's another person I could see having big impact. Oh, perfect. We've also got an answer to our Tay and Gwen question. I don't have to do any research. Tay and Gwen played twice on the same team in AUX in 2022, but it has never happened in any other season. So that's the 2 times they've ever been together. This will be the 3rd. So as we round out these last picks, Odyssey Alexander, Jadalyn Alchin, Hope Trotwine, and Carly Spade, like we mentioned. And then Mackenzie Clark, Jordan Roberts, Nadia Taylor, and Josie Muffley coming in to lock in your week 4 teams. These are your 4 groups that are going to play together this week. As the season starts to run out, I feel like we've talked about what we think it's going to take to win as the champion, and it's going to be the win points. And this is where that starts, is today at the draft. A little different, though, only having 2 days of practice, not 3. Not quite as much time to put things together for your team. Here's when you'll see these groups for the first time. So on Friday, it's going to be Team Kilfoyle versus Team Palacios. That's at 5 CT, 6 ET. And that's going to be on Bally. And then we're going to have Team Lorenz versus Team Ferramo follow up at 7:30 CT, 8:30 ET. And then that game is going to be on ESPNU. That will kick off the week on Friday. Man, Kat, we got a lot of questions that maybe they'll get answered this week. Maybe they won't.
That it's like we said, so up in the air week to week. So many different people are getting hot, which I can't say enough in the way this is unfolding. I do still like Team Lorenz, and she sticks to her plan of getting mostly veterans. Mackenzie Clark, the only rookie on her roster, and I do think she has a strong one. I like her infield, although as I said, I like Sachel Palacios's infield as well, with Tori Vidalis, Leach, Anissa Urtez, and then she rounds it out with a rookie Koffel. I mean, that could go either way as well. So I like the way both of them have strong infield defensively and offensively. So I think it'll come down to those two. But, you know, we've been wrong in the last 3 weeks.
Yes, we have. And one thing I know is I'll probably be wrong again before this is over. But I am so excited for this week to see these matchups, to see these teams. We will be back next week for one last draft of the season as we look at the teams that are going to chase their way at the leaderboard for the final time. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Kat, as always, love talking softball with you. We'll see you next week.
All right. See you next week.